What's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here with Tricky Jim at Full Grip Games. Today I'm going to be showing off a Galarian Obstagoon deck. Whether you believe in the deck or think it's just a meme, there is without a doubt a lot of Galarian Obstagoon decks on the ladder, and I'm really excited to show off my take on the deck. But before I do, I want to show off fullgripcodes.com. Many of you guys have already checked out our new code website, instant email delivery, PTCGO codes. If you haven't, make sure to give it a try. We've got a whole lot of PTCGO codes available, standard codes dating all the way back to black and white, X and Y codes available, GX codes, so on and so forth, and a beautiful new banner that my sister made for us. So make sure check out fullgripcodes.com if you're looking for email delivery for PTCGO codes. It's a great resource. Moving on to the deck, I'm really excited about this build of Galarian Obstagoon Sableye that I have here. Galarian Obstagoon has got an ability Untamed Shout, which allows you to place 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon during your turn when you evolve it, which is really good, but a lot of players are trying to build a deck around the Obstruct attack, which reads, during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. And of course, most of the metagame in standard format is made up of basic Pokemon. So Obstruct is a very powerful attack option. Now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of great energy acceleration for dark Pokemon. So we do have counter gain we can play if we're behind on prizes to be able to obstruct with just 1 energy. We also have a couple copies of Stealthy Hood because one of the best ways to get around Galarian Obstagoon is to use Phione to push the Galarian Obstagoon to the bench, which resets its Obstruct attack effect. And then the Galarian Obstagoon can be gusted up and knocked out after the Phione pushes it to the bench. So 2 copies of Stealthy Hood to make sure that Phione does not become a problem. Rosa is also very good in this deck since we are playing Lillie's Pokédolls to help us buy time while we set up, attach energy to Pokemon like Sableye V or Yveltal-GX. Yveltal-GX, another insane Pokemon in this deck, since Yveltal-GX's Doom Count GX automatically takes a knockout on a Pokemon if it has exactly 4 damage counters on it, which is pretty easy to obtain considering that Galarian Zigzagoon's Headbutt Tantrum, admittedly I don't know that I've ever read that ability name, but I know that it places 10 damage, right? It places 1 damage counter when you put it from your hand to your bench, so very strong ability with Headbutt Tantrum. That combined with an Untamed Shout adds up to 4 damage counters, and of course will allow your Yveltal-GX to knock out even the biggest tag team Pokemon for just 1 energy attachment. Going along with Yveltal, we've also have Sableye V. Sableye V is great because it's got Load Search. You can put a trainer card from your discard pile back to your hand, kind of like a mini junk hunt, but we've also got the attack Crazy Claws. This attack does 60 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So with a couple of Shrine Ticks or Galarian Zigzagoons Headbutts or Galarian Obstagoons Untamed Shouts, you're going to be knocking out just about anything in standard with a Crazy Claws. Now, Crazy Claws does have a pretty difficult to obtain double dark requirement for its attack. A lot of times you're going to wish that that Crazy Claws just cost 1 dark. There are a couple of things that I've been kind of stewing around with. You could play a Darkrai Prism Star that you could nab off of Rosa, right? And the energy, and grab an energy switch, right? If you grab Darkrai Prism Star, energy switch, and if you already have an energy in your hand, you could power up a Sableye in 1 turn. There's some real wombo combos you could come up with in order to get that extra energy. You could also play a copy of Bead. I don't necessarily like Bead since Bead doesn't actually get you any of the other cards that you need, like the Darkness energy to your hand. So I would rather try to play into something with Rosa. You could also put a Rayquaza GX in the deck. You could Rosa for Rayquaza GX, energy switch, energy, and then if you have an energy in your discard pile, you don't actually need an energy in your hand. You could just power up the Sableye V so long as you already have it in play. So I think that Rosa is a powerful card in this deck. I don't have any of those Wombo combo cards in here right now because this is just a straightforward list, but I thought I'd talk about those ideas that I've had just in case you're interested in trying those out. Mew from Unbroken Bonds, really important to have in your Galarian Obstagoon deck for that bench barrier ability, preventing the likes of Naganadel-GX from knocking out your Galarian Obstagoons on the bench, or of course Pikaram's Tag Bolt GX, which can be very difficult for us to play around. And since Pikaram is such a high profile profile matchup and something that is pretty difficult for this deck to deal with, despite the fact that Pikarom plays no evolutions. Pikarom just plays a lot of Gust and is very aggressive. We do also have the Wobbuffet, whose Shady Tail ability can shut down the Coco Prism Star and make it a little bit easier to set up under Pikarom, which is such an aggressive deck. 2 copies of Pokemon Catcher and 1 Great Catcher is going to allow our Galarian Obstagoon to be able to finish off threats on the bench, or just be able to bring up things for our Yveltal-GX or our Sableye V to knock out. If there's an Arceus Dialga on the opponent's side of the field, which is taking a few Shrine ticks or something like that, we can bring those up with Great Catcher or the Pokemon Catchers and make sure that we take those out easily. A few copies of Shrine of Punishment, obviously, because the damage ticks are going to really add up and make the knockouts for Yveltal and Sableye easier. Marnie and Cynthia, a lot of shuffle draw supporters here because we don't necessarily want to discard any of our resources with this deck. We want to make sure that we are either selecting the resources out of the deck with Rosa, or we are shuffling and getting our resources into hand that way. Now, I have seen some versions of this deck playing Cinccino. That's another way to build it. I had Cinccino in the deck originally, and I think the Zacian V is just very good for the Intrepid Sword and kind of takes the place of the Cinccino early on. You're going to want to bench Zacian V turn 1 almost every single game and just start drawing with Intrepid Sword. Usually you're going to have Lillie's Pokédolls in the active while you're trying to get your hand just so that you can take some key knockouts with Yveltal and Sableye. And anyways, that's enough with the deck list. Let's see it in action with some gameplay. I think that this deck could be a surprise deck to pop up if people get the build just right for the Oceania International Championships as well. Since, like I said, the metagame is comprised of so many basic Pokemon, it just seems like Obstruct has to have a place somewhere since it is so good at blocking decks off completely. I mean, Baby Blacephalon is a prime example. Doesn't really have a great strategy to play around Obstruct at all. ADP decks usually do have the Fion, and they're going to alter creation, so that's pretty tough. But if you can get the Stealthy Hood and minimal Pokemon on your bench, you know, Lillie's Pokédolls primarily, then you can shut the Arceus Dialga off completely. And it looks like we are playing against an Arceus Dialga deck here, so we'll see if we can get that strategy set up. And we may want to just go with a bare bones kind of setup, since this deck is going to be advancing the game state very quickly with Altered Creation GX, and I don't have any great way to stop them from doing that with this deck. So we are going to just try to be disruptive. We've got the Shrine here. I don't even think that I want to necessarily put the counter gain onto anybody, because I think in this matchup particularly it is better to have the Stealthy Hood on my Galarian Zigzagoon. So we're just going to go here and then Marnie and hopefully disrupt my opponent a little bit with their own hand. And I did find the Stealthy Hood, did not find a Quick Ball or a Pokemon Communication to get my Zacian into play. Obviously Zacian would be very good, but I think that we are just going to place the Stealthy Hood and pass. My opponent this next turn, we can expect them to more than likely go for the Altered Creation GX, and then I'm going to try and just wall with Galarian Obstagoon and just get my win condition that way. Now, in my version of Arceus Dialga, I'm playing 4 copies of Pokemon Catcher and the Fion to try and deal with anything that has dolls in it, right? Because dolls are just one of the best cards in Standard right now. Such a high-profile card, especially since there is such limited Gust in Standard as well, making decks like Galarian Obstagoon possible. So we'll see if my opponent got the Aurora energy. I was expecting that they did, given the switch. And hopefully my opponent does not have a Gust to bring up this Galarian Obstagoon. I do have an energy for myself. I think it's probably safest for me to attach an energy to this active here, so that then I have energies on each of my guys. I will use Night Slash, go into the Lillie's Pokédoll, and go from there. I think that's probably my safest bet. That way I have 2 Galarian Obstagoons that I am working on, and as we see, we did get the Galarian Linoone, which is very good for me. And we can decide if it is even worth benching anything else. I'm not sure that it is, because if my opponent gusts and takes 2 knockouts, they should not be able to ever knock out both of these Galarian Zigzagoons if I am doing this, or Galarian Obstagoons if I'm doing this correctly. So I think this turn we're just going to Night Slash and go into our Doll. I do like that attack on these Galarian Linoons. We're only playing 2. Usually we're going to be using Rare Candy to pop into our Galarian Obstagoons quickly. But the Galarian Linoone with the hit and run attack, very strong. We'll see if my opponent does have the Phione this turn. The Phione would be very good. However, Crushing Hammer. Whoa. All right, coming out of left field there. Did not anticipate that. However, I do have everything I need to more or less set up the checkmate scenario here against this Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia deck. The Crushing Hammers could be pretty gnarly for me to deal with, but I do have the energy and the Pokemon Communication and the Stealthy Hood on the active, so I should be in the clear to just start using Obstruct, and we'll see if there's anything that they can do to stop me from just winning this game outright. Now let's do a little bit of math. If we put 30 here, 90, 90, 180, I think that it does actually end up mattering. So we'll go there and just start using Obstruct. And this actually is this is one of my kind of my beefs with the Galarian Obstagoon deck, is that it's pretty simple. You just, there you go, my opponent scoop, that's it. So like you're playing this deck where it's like your opponent either has it or they don't. And they don't. So I just win, and there's not much more interaction than that. I'm just trying to set up this checkmate board state, and if my opponent's got an out to it, they got an out to it. If they don't have an out to it, I win the game. So it is just one of these hot or cold decks. Sometimes you just get blasted, run off the field, but the checkmate scenario is very real, as we saw right there with that Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, Zacian V deck, which is largely considered to be one of the best, if not the best, decks in format right now. And the fact that we just got, what was that, turn 3 checkmate on my opponent's deck there, they didn't have any way around it. I think the only real way that they could deal with that Galarian Obstagoon would have been if they hit double Pokemon Catcher. So I am playing Pokemon Catcher in my version of that deck because I think that Pokemon Catcher is just a very strong card right now. Also, I think that another way that they could have dealt with that board state is if they played one Pokemon Catcher, they gust up the benched Galarian Obstagoon, and then use Phione to push the one with the push the one back out. That being said, I would have been left with 2 Obstagoons potentially, and they could have potentially won the game. So a couple ways they could have played around that, but they didn't seem to have much that turn. So that was very strong for us. We're going to go ahead and attach this energy. No use in putting the Wobbuffet down. Wobbuffet doesn't really matter and will pass. I think this is another ADP deck, judging by the Cryogonal. I don't think that... And what are all these Crushing Hammers doing in these ADP decks? That is certainly interesting and not something that I have seen too much of. I have seen some random wait-and-see hammers in the Greens ADP decks. I have seen some Greens ADP decks running around on the ladder. I do think that Crushing Hammer could be interesting in the meta right now, since there are a lot of ADP decks running around, and if you can remove that energy from an opponent's ADP who went first, attached their energy to it, the Aurora energy or just a metal energy, so on and so forth, it can be a huge momentum swing. Also, bopping that energy off of a Pikarom can be very strong too. So I see the merit. I am usually not the kind of deck builder who is going to compromise consistency by putting Crushing Hammers in the deck. I think that it's pretty situational. Pikarom can still play around a random Crushing Hammer with Tapu Koko Prism Star, especially if they know that they're in the deck. And ADP on the other hand, can be hindered by that. So I think that it's at least interesting and worth talking about. We do have a Linoone, no Rare Candy. that's fine. And I could just commit and put the second energy onto the Linoone. I think that's probably fine since my opponent is going to be charging up that Arceus Palkia at least for another turn. And then I've got another Quick Ball, which I've got no problem playing. We can use that to go get ourselves another dude. Yeah, so let's do that. And I don't really need the Great Catcher because we're just going to be attempting to set up our checkmate scenario again against this ADP deck. I really just need to get myself the Galarian Obstagoon and the Hood. So this is one of the reasons that Rosa is so good in this deck, because you put the Lillie's Pokédolls in the active, and then you can Rosa for the exact combination of pieces that you need. And sometimes it's more Crushing Hammer. I guess we can probably expect there to be 4 Crushing Hammers in this deck. So that is one way, I guess, to try and keep your opponent from using Obstruct, is with a heavy barrage of Crushing Hammers. Though, like I said, I don't necessarily think that that is... we also have Team Yell Grunts we see that my opponent is playing, which is also interesting and could be disruptive if they are able to pull that combination off. And, you know, maybe Crushing Hammer and then Team Yell Grunts, they could remove all of my energies from my Galarian Obstagoon and make it very difficult for me to get that checkmate scenario. This next turn, it looks like they may not have the turn 2 Alter Creation, which is really good for us. Every turn we can buy is very meaningful. They retreated the Cryogonal, I think. So they can't retreat twice, unless I was mistaken. No, they do not have it. So they are just going to have to Intrepid Sword, draw some cards. And that gives me another turn, which is fantastic. The more time we get to set up our board state, the better. This next turn, I'm just going to be using Cynthia. Obviously, their hand size, very small. So I don't necessarily have to worry about disrupting it. I'm just going to take as big of a draw as I can get. And we did whiff pretty much everything this turn. I could use Galarian, I could use Zacian to draw some cards this turn. That does give my opponent some targets, though. I mean, because they could just knock out the Zacian. That's 3 prizes. Then they knock out my Galarian Zigzagoon. That's 2 prizes. That's not enough for game. So if I bench the Zacian, it's fine, so long as I don't bench anything else. So we should be cool with that, especially the Zacian is no longer. So that's okay. I think I will just get myself then Sableye V. We could go on the offensive. I don't necessarily think that I will, but we could get ourselves another Galarian Zigzagoon. They should not be able to win the game if I just have a few of those down. So I think out of safety, just for my board state, just in case something weird does pop up, we'll just get another Galarian Zigzagoon, put that down, and we have got another energy that we're going to be putting on this guy, and we need to kind of keep loading up this single Galarian Linoone because of the fact that they play Crushing Hammers. So we do need to try and have those in the bank, more or less, so that I can still attack even with a Crushing Hammer hit. Now we do play 8 Dark Energy in the list, as well as a Rod. And the reason that I'm a little bit high, I guess, on the energy count compared to some of the other lists that I have seen is because just of the importance of the manual attachment. It's extremely important. As we're seeing here, there's tons of Crushing Hammers that I'm dealing with, but I'm still getting the manual attachment every single turn, which is really meaningful because as we've seen, my opponent has been able to deny me some energy. So it has been really essential that we get that. So I'm not necessarily sure that I want to place this Air Balloon. It doesn't really matter. I think I can place it onto the Lillie's Pokédoll, and that way I can just shuffle it back into the deck if I end up wanting it. We do have an Obstagoon, but we do not have the energy. So we are seeing just how good that energy denial has been for my opponent. Let's just go ahead and get ourselves the Linoone, and this hand is not great. If my opponent takes a prize, I can use Counter Gain and start using Obstruct that way, And I'm wondering if it's worth it to just throw, you know, let the Pokédoll stay active or see if they try to gust something up. I think I will make them waste a gust. That probably seems fine. You know, so long as I can get one of these guys up and using Obstruct, we should be able to win this game. But as we're seeing here, kind of case in point, the high energy count is going to make a difference. We're going to need energy going down every single turn, and it looks like energy denial is certainly a way to beat this deck. My opponent's 4 Crushing Hammers and Team Yelgrunt could certainly help them in their path to do that. And I'm wondering where that space for the Crushing Hammers came from. Perhaps they have cut into their gusting options. Maybe they're not playing custom catchers. Maybe they're not playing 4 copies of Pokemon Catcher. Maybe they just got a couple copies of Great Catcher or something like that. That space had to come from somewhere. So there is something that my opponent's list, you know, does not have. They've got the Cryogonal, they've got the Absol, so they do have these bench-sitting techs. They've got Jirachis, they've got a Skateboard, as Energy Spinner. Maybe they don't have as high a number of Metal Energy. That's a possibility as well. And them going in with the Cryogonal is interesting, because then I cannot play any items this next turn, which makes it very difficult. So I could just Night Slash. They are going to be able to cheese some prizes here, which is a little bit frustrating. I can't play any other Pokemon, because if I do, then I put myself at risk. So we got a Dark Energy, which is not great. I can just Night Slash into Galarian Zigzagoon, probably, and they may bite. I think I go here, so we have 2, and they may bite on just taking the guaranteed knockouts. We'll put this thing up with one of their benched guys. They may not just continue going in with the item lock. See, they got Lysander Labs. That is also very tough for me, because it means that they are going to be able to use Fion in order to take a knockout. Hitting the Pokemon Catcher, they do bring up one of my Galarian Linoones, and we'll see if they decide to keep the item lock going or if they want to take a knockout as they zoom into the bottom of their deck. The Lysander Labs is really tough because I can't use the Stealthy Hood. However, if they put a big Pokemon up, they are not going to have bench space for the Fion. So it gives me some time to be able to find more shrines while, you know, I kind of slowly grind towards a knockout. They do only have 10 cards left in deck. So at this point, we could win via deck out, because my opponent has just zoomed through to the bottom of their deck to get this play going. So we are pretty happy to just be able to promote this Galarian Linoone and see what we can do. However, I do really have to hope that my opponent doesn't have Cynthia and Caitlin to bring that Team Yelgrunt back, because that could be really bad for us. So let's see what we can do. We've got Rare Candy, I've got Rosa. I am going to have to probably put some more energy back into the deck. Let's see what we can get. I definitely want a supporter, so we're going to go for Cynthia. I want, as far as, you know, the Stealthy Hood does not matter. I just need the Galarian Obstagoon, and I need an energy. So that's all good. And then we want to draw a supporter for next turn. I'm going to put some more energy back into the deck. If they gust up my other guy, that's fine. So long as they don't have, you know, we should just win. So long as I can keep streaming energy onto these guys. So I can put my damage. Honestly, I just want to put it somewhere where it's not super meaningful. We're going to go here, put the dolls down, put some more dark energy back into my deck. And we're looking pretty good. Let's see. We'll shuffle the basic energy. It's all we really want back into the deck. Everything else doesn't matter. We are just going for the obstruct win condition to try and win this game. And since they are bench locked, like I said, they can't put the Fion up. So I've got a couple of turns to try and find a counter to the Lysander Labs. so that that does not become an option for them. I don't really care if they take this. They can go down to 2 prizes. They can get very close. But at this point, we should be in a checkmate scenario unless they've got some way around my obstruct, because I can just Lillie's Pokédoll both of these guys back into the deck. They'll knock out the Galarian Zigzagoon, and then they have no way to Fion around my Galarian Obstagoon, and we should just win just like that. So, I mean, it looks like we're going to beat what is largely considered to be the BDIF 2 games in a row. So that is a pretty good look for Galarian Obstagoon, which is a deck that I have definitely underestimated in my stream so far. If you've checked out my streams, hopefully you have, twitch.tv/TrickyJim. We stream live Pokemon trading card game content there every single weekday. It's a ton of fun, and we've got a great community there of Pokemon players. So at this point, we're just going to obstruct. Hope to hang on to my energy. I'm going to thin my deck a little bit more just by putting some more stuff, you know, out of play. I'm not going to necessarily put, I could put a counter gain onto the Galarian Obstagoon since there's not going to be anything for my opponent to Fion out of the way. However, the counter gain could make it so that my Galarian Obstagoon has a little bit of an easier time attacking. However, I'm not terribly concerned with it. I think I'm just going to hold on to it for now. I don't want to commit a tool to my Galarian Obstagoon, but I do think the counter gain is potentially the correct one, just so that I can obstruct with 1 energy should I need to. But I mean, these wins are just hilarious. We're getting some very free matchups here. If you can just get this Galarian Obstagoon obstruct strategy to stick, it's a walk in the park, really. And we've got a couple of Pokemon catchers here. My opponent's only got 5 cards left in deck. They are going to go for that Crushing Hammer strategy, and my hand is not great. So that was their 4th Crushing Hammer, and I'm gonna kick myself if we don't find it here off the top. And that's it. They did get there with the Crushing Hammers. Totally wild. Well played by my opponents. The Crushing Hammer just really getting in there. I could have put the counter gain down. That would have saved us there. 4th Crushing Hammer coming in hot for my opponent. And, you know, hindsight is 20/20. So I'm thinking that that just would have been the correct play, laying that down. And, wow, the Crushing Hammers. After thinking about it, my opponent actually did have Lysander Labs in play. So I'm not going to beat myself up too much about not laying that counter gain, because the Lysander Labs would have stopped it from working. So it didn't really matter. And my opponent's Energy Denial ended up being really clutch there. That coin flip winning them the game, removing that that second dark from my Obstagoon, not having the darkness energy in hand off the Marnie. Not much more I can do about that, but I'm glad that the counter gain didn't end up making a difference. Lysander Labs was definitely very good. So we'll see what we've got here on the first turn. My opponent's probably going to Horror House me. I'm not super into that, to be honest. So let's go here. And I think we're going to just switch into something that is a little bit less of a liability and then pass. I don't have a great starting hand. No Quick Balls, no Pokemon Communications, no Supporters, no nothing. So not great. But we'll see what my opponent does. This is probably a Mewtwo and Mew Malamar deck, if I had to guess. We may have to end up going about this one a little bit different, because if I do just, I guess if I do just put up the Galarian Obstagoons, you know, Malamar only does 60 damage to it. You can do 90 and knock them out in 1 hit. But I may have to end up using some other strategies in this matchup, because you know, I might not just be able to wall my opponent off completely. Their deck does have some evolutions in it, technically. So they're probably going for the Terminal Horror House. See, they got Chaotic Swell, Day-Day Change. Very strong start from my opponent. And I'm anticipating not being able to play any cards from my hand this next turn, which is totally fine. So they will probably take a knockout on my Mew. Then I'm going to need something quickly so that I can go about getting a move on here. Now, my opponent does have Naganadel. They put that Naganadel into the discard pile. Some of these Mewtwo and Mewlists are playing Ditto so that they can evolve into Naganadel and then attack with an evolution Pokemon. Since, you know, we do have some evolution Pokemon in here. Naganadel-GX is one that can evolve from Ditto Prism Star, which can be a little bit of a pain for us to deal with too. And discarding the Giratina, I can anticipate that they're going to get an Inkay and Horror House GX. I'm just hoping that off of the next couple of draws, I'll be able to find myself a draw supporter. And they're setting up pretty explosively. Definitely a little envious of that turn one, but it's fine. Slow and steady, you know, wins the race. And let's see, the Horror House GX, probably. Another Mewtwo, bench locked. Cool. And there's the Horror House GX. So let's see what we got. It's a Pokédoll. Cool. Nothing going on for me. They can't do anything, and they can't finesse my bench. They can't Venom Shot because the Mew is in the active. I anticipate they'll probably knock out the Mew. And they're going to Marnie, which is great news for me, considering that my hand was bad. This hand is much better. And it's actually got some things going on. There's a Naganadel GX. They can't evolve it. Looks like they're probably going to discard it, right? But it's another option for them to be able to, I guess, attack into my Obstagoons. Well, they're just going for the Malamars, discarding everything else, and probably just going to try and run me off the board the old-fashioned way, which is certainly a way to do this. Now, they did have to discard a couple of switches in their opening hand, and they've only got a hand of 3. So it's possible that I could drag up Gengar and Mimikyu and buy myself a turn, but I would have to Great Catcher it away and get rid of my Quick Ball, which is not necessarily what I'm trying to do. I probably just want a Quick Ball, get rid of the Great Catcher, get myself a Pokemon, try to establish a little bit of a stronger board. That seems more reasonable. So we're going to go here, and I think that, yeah, we'll go there, and we're going to Cynthia. See what we can come up with. Got Pokédoll and Zacian, so this was a good hit for us. And then I can put the energy here, and we're just going to, I think we have to Night Slash. Yeah, we're going to Night Slash into the Pokédoll. And then hope that we top deck into something decent. I can't necessarily Zacian yet. Could Zacian down the line here in a second. You know, once the Pokédoll goes down, maybe I top deck a supporter and can get myself out of this bind. But we might just have to promote Zacian and go with an Intrepid Sword. We'd be giving up 3 prizes, which is a little bit sketchy. But my opponent doesn't have a great way to play out of Galarian Obstagoon right now from the looks of it. So feel pretty comfortable doing that, and we'll put the second energy down onto Galarian Linoone. Now they are building up towards a Venom Shot though. So I'm just going to pinch that energy because I don't want to lose 2. That would be very bad. And potentially a game-losing scenario for us if I lose 2 energy on the same Galarian Linoone. They could, yeah, and they're going to start Venom Shotting those. They definitely want to get that out of the way. If we top deck Pokemon Communication, I've got the Obstruct this next turn, but this is getting to be very dicey. We do pull it off, actually. Miraculously, we somehow get it. So I've got the Rare Candy into the Galarian Obstagoon. That is very good. And then, yeah, I think we're just going to try and buy ourselves some time here with Obstruct. Now, my opponent can knock out my Zacian. They will have 2 prizes remaining if they do. They can start charging up Malamar's Psychic Sphere for 60. That is a 3-hit KO. They would need 3 different Malamars to hit into my same Galarian Obstagoon to get that game plan rocking. Now, the sketchy part is that I am in this situation, 0-card hand, but they don't have any way to damage my guys. So I have to keep using my attack can't really... I think we might as well throw that since it's going to get shuffled back into my hand anyway if my opponent continues forward with this. So we're just going to keep swinging with the Obstruct. We'll see if they are feeling it enough to power up Malamars and hit me with the Psychic Sphere. They can get close, but not necessarily close enough to take the knockout, I don't think, unless they build up a third Malamar. Like I said, they'd have to hit the same Galarian Obstagoon 3 times, you know, with 3 different Malamars, because I'm going to be knocking them out. Potentially, let's see, if they bring up, they get the first hit off with a Malamar. They hit in, I knock it out, they hit in again. Yeah, so they're going to need 3 different Malamars in order to make that work. Unless they've got a big charm or something they can put on to Malamar. That would be saucy, not going to lie. I'd be pretty impressed if they big charm a Malamar. I'm also hoping there's no Ditto Prism Star shenanigans in their deck. That would be pretty bad for us as well if they put a Ditto Prism Star down and go with that. I don't mind having this on the Zacian. That seems fine, so we're just going to keep obstructing. And we're putting that onto the Zacian so that if it does get gusted up somehow, that I am able to retreat it and continue using Obstruct, because that is certainly one way to break this. If my opponent gusts, right now I'm actually extremely vulnerable because, yeah, they can actually go in with this Blacephalon. So this is really tough, and it's actually game time for me. They can put 12 damage counters on my Galarian Obstagoon. Also, if they just had a way to gust up my Zacian, they could have Venom Shot. So they get to place 12 damage counters. Galarian Obstagoon does not get stopped. His thing does not stop damage counter placement. So that is very good. So we can still win this game. We just need to figure out a way to knock out that Mewtwo over there. And I do have some cards in my hand that can potentially help me do that. So let's go there. I think, sure, might as well. I do get to knock out the Blacephalon this turn with Galarian Obstagoon. The Wobbuffet could stop a Ditto shenanigans. I don't necessarily think that it matters at this point, so let's just Marnie. And I'm going to go down to 2 prizes. So I just need to find out a way to gust up and knock out that Dedenne for a game. Don't necessarily think the counter gain is going to help. Could go with the Galarian Zigzagoon and just go with a second Galarian Obstagoon potentially. I do have the other Galarian Obstagoons in my deck. That's probably fine. I'm going to go there. Place damage counters onto Dedenne. Get an energy down. And we have to obstruct. Now, if they bring up Malamar and swing with Malamar, then that's fine. I could just Rosa for the Rare Candy Galarian Obstagoon and just keep swinging. And we're off of that 3 prize turn for the Blacephalon. This is a reason, actually, where I think that I do actually think that the Espeon and Deoxys Tag Team GX is a really underrated card in this deck in particular, because it helps get you out of these Galarian Obstagoon situations. Just look at how powerful a cross-division GX could be right now. My opponent could just take me out of this game completely if they just put 6 energy. You know, if they had not used Horror House GX, if they had 6 energy on this, they just use the cross-division GX and they take out both of my guys and then knock out the Zacian for game. That would have been stellar. But most of the lists are cutting Espeon and Deoxys, which is fine if you're a Galarian Obstagoon player. Looks like my opponent is building up all this energy on the Mewtwo Mew. Maybe they intend on trying to snipe a bunch for game, but I don't have a whole lot left that I need in order to take this win. It's really just very close. My opponent's going to be at 2 damage counters, 3. I mean, like, I'm close to winning. Wow, and they actually choose to Venom Shot my Zacian. This puts me in a situation where I am pretty golden for a win this next turn. I think I just keep my hand. I can put down the Galarian Linoone. I can Pokemon Communication. They didn't take a knockout, so I don't have it right now. But I am very close. So we can put this down. And I think that I can pretty comfortably just... might as well hold on to the energy, I think. Obstruct. They snipe my Zacian for knockout. Then I just finish the game off with... yeah. They have to take a knockout. But if they take a knockout, I finish the game off. That's cool. I think the energy there is correct, and we're just going to obstruct. And keep chipping away at this Mewtwo and Mew. Got 4 damage counters there now, so if they do take a knockout, I can Rosa for Darkness Energy, Yveltal-GX, Great Catcher, and win. We are getting Marnie. I was kind of anticipating that, so maybe they have a way to take a knockout, limit my hand. We've got the Yveltal-GX, which is really only good against this Dedenne right now. And they're just putting more energy onto the Mewtwo. So they are not hip to trying to knock out my Galarian Obstagoon with a Malamar. That's just like not what they're going for. So that's fine. They'll knock out my Galarian Linoone. And they are putting themselves in a pretty decent spot to be able to pull off this game, because they can just finish me off with Malamar to take their last prize. However, they do need... let's see. We got to put the Pokédoll down because it's essentially a free retreater. Do 90 more damage to this Mewtwo with Obstruct. Place the Galarian... you know, at this point, it doesn't matter because they could charge up a Malamar to win the game. I don't have the Gust for game on the Dedenne, so that's fine. You can go here. I think it makes a difference to have that down, so I think I am going to do that. And we could Gust. We do 180 damage to Gengar and Mimikyu. Also seems good. And I'm just going to Obstruct. I'm going to hang on to everything else. And this guy, I'm a Rare Candy away from game on this Mewtwo and Mew, if they don't have a way to heal it. But, or I'm just, you know, an Absorb Vitality away from game. So they don't have it. I've got knockout on the Mewtwo and Mew, and that's going to be game. A very grindy win for Galarian Obstagoon, but pretty much expect most of your matches to go this way if you're playing in a Galarian Obstagoon deck. I do think that the dolls are very good because they just give you that much needed time. They help unlock your Rosa plays. I think Rosa is good. I think Counter Gain is good. I think Stealthy Hood is good. You know, I've looked at this deck for a while now, and I've seen it in a bunch of different iterations. We've had a Tyrogue in the deck. I had Tyrogue in for a little while. I had 2 Sableye in the deck for a little while. I think just 1 is probably fine. So you have the options to go with these guys. If you want a second one, you can Ordinary Rod it back into the deck. But I think the primary strategy is just that we're going to be using Obstruct. We're going to try and get a bunch of dolls into play and then limit my opponent's win condition by just using Obstruct over and over again. Stealthy Hood helps you with that. Counter Gain helps you get that win condition going. Shrine of Punishment helps just kind of boost your Obstruct damage along as well, so that you're getting these knockouts a little bit more quickly than you would otherwise. Other than that, I'm very happy with the list. The list seems to do exactly what we're setting out to do every single game. We're getting the Galarian Obstagoon out. We're making it very hard for our opponent to win the match, and we're getting some pretty quick concessions, as we saw with that first game against the Zacian ADP deck. So thank you guys all so much for watching the video. Let me know, what do you all think of Galarian Obstagoon in the comments below. Make sure to like the video, sub the channel, ring that bell, and of course check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/TrickyJim, where I stream live Pokemon trading card game content every single weekday. Y'all have a good one and take it easy. Peace.